evening, everyone. I hope everybody's well. This is new for Nicky and I, so if it doesn't work out, we'll know soon enough. But I think you have to send in your messages, so we'll take those and we'll answer the questions as we can. What I want to say first of all is I hope everybody of the Super White Army is safe and is doing the right thing in terms of what's happening around us with the coronavirus and staying at home, etc., etc. And those of our fans who are in the health service, then thank you very much for everything that you're doing. What I wanted to do was to just sort of really cover a few areas as we speak. I mean, I'll start with the coronavirus and how the club's responding to it, and then you guys fire in your questions and we'll pick those up. The first thing I'd say is the coronavirus issue from our perspective when we first picked this up. We set a project up, which is what you always do in these situations, and we set the objectives out right at the start of that. There were two objectives as far as I was concerned. The first one was we had to extend the cash resilience of the club from say about 3 months, which is what we had, to about 12 months, and I'm pleased to say we did that within probably the first 2 or 3 days, and partly because we've always been preparing for this, well, not for the coronavirus, but for various things, and that's the benefit of having got the club into a position where people are prepared to invest in it. So that was the pretty easy part of it, and the second part of it was for the club to come out stronger, actually, because I believe firmly, as I've said in the press many times, that what will happen is there will be a change to the wages market, and we are better prepared to deal with that if you take away some of the ways in which the market's worked in the past. But the second thing was really to make this club come out stronger. Part of that was, coming out with our new pitch, which we'll talk a little bit about, and we've kept relatively quiet because we wanted to give that as a bit of a gift and a surprise to the fans. So the club has a new pitch, and we can talk about that if you want questions on it. Equally, we wanted to keep on track as many as the projects that we had going. And then finally, we also wanted to, I think this is an important part of it really, is that at the time of this great crisis, that, if you're a community club, then you actually walk the talk. And Nicky will talk a little bit about what we've been doing on that, because that is a massive part of building up that which has been successful for the club over the last 5 years, nearly 6 years now that we've been here, is this oneness that we've had between fans, the club, the players, the manager, and actually also the community around the club as well. So I think that what we did in the community and what we're trying to do in the community is massively important. So just back to it, and I'll hand over to Nicky to tell you what we've been doing in the community. But the reality is that when this appears as a crisis, the two objectives that we had was to extend our cash resources to at least 12 months, and we've done that. And the second thing is to make sure the club came out stronger and better. And I think the pitch is one. We've got other projects we want to keep on track. But equally, the stuff we've done in the community, I think, has strengthened that bond. So Nicky will just tell you a little bit about that. And then we'll throw it out to questions after that.
Yeah, so on the community side, there are a sort of number of different strands to what we've been doing. Probably the most visible to most fans will be the shopping and befriending service that we've been doing.
Me whiskey.
For vulnerable people in the community, people who are isolating, who can't get out to the shops, who are shielding, etc. So we teamed up with HelpLink to do that. HelpLink were already supporting around 900 old people in the community in normal times, so well before the COVID crisis. But the volunteers that they had to support them were largely older people themselves, people who were 70 plus. So they were starting to see a lot of their volunteers having to drop out because they themselves weren't supposed to be leaving home. So they had a big shortage of volunteers. We had plenty of willing volunteers and also some of the important practical resources to be able to help. So things like the commercial hospitality accounts with the food suppliers, for example. Somebody like HelpLink didn't have those, so they didn't have any way of being able to source shopping for the community other than literally having individual volunteers popping down to the supermarket, which simply wasn't going to work. We had the ability to be able to take payments securely which I think is quite important, because a lot of really well-meaning groups have set up informally in the community to help people. But sadly, and probably not unsurprisingly, we've seen some instances of elderly people being taken advantage by giving their money to people for shopping and then never seeing them again. And so what we were doing was trying to set up a system between us that was secure, so that people didn't have to worry about who was doing that and who was taking their money. But also HelpLink, because they are a charity that has a team running all the time, albeit a slightly different version. They had some very important software which matches up where deliveries need going and physically where the volunteers are and what their availability is, etc. So that's worked really well. And between us, we're supporting around about 1,000 people in the Wirral community at the moment. In some instances, that's through phone calls, because a lot of them are frightened, a lot of them are lonely, and somebody just needs to check on a regular basis to make sure they're okay, everything they need, they've got their medication, etc. So that's what, and obviously doing their grocery shopping is the other part of that. The other major strand that we're doing on the community side is the emergency food parcels. And this is a different thing, because this is for people who simply can't afford to buy food at the moment. I mean, the food banks, I think, in Wirral are busy in normal times. So you can imagine that with the overlay of the financial stress that we've got now, it's immensely worse, because a lot of people who would ordinarily be donors to the food banks aren't in a position to do that at the moment, whether because they can't afford to, or they can't get out to buy food to be able to donate to the food bank. So the second major strand is doing those food parcels. Now, initially we were doing them off our own bat, so through our own contacts, people that we know in the community, and delivering to them. The council then asked all charities to stop doing food parcels on an individual basis, to have all requests go in through the council, and then they've given each charity a geographical area to look after, and they gave us Tranmere and Rockferry. So at the moment, all of our food parcels are going to Tranmere and Rockferry, and I have to say the volume started off relatively slowly. I think most people stockpiled before the lockdown came into effect. What we're seeing now is that people have run out of those stock supplies, and we're certainly seeing a big ramping up of the volume. So I think today we had 34 food parcel requests coming in, and they're really escalating on a daily basis. And I'd like to a particular thanks to Ben Harrison on that one from the Tranmere Trust, who's been helping coordinate that, because it's been a big piece of work. But there's other stuff going on. So the Tranmere stewards are stewarding the main food hub for the Wirral. They needed qualified people to do the security and the stewarding there. So that's our guys who are down there working. And our community team have been great in just keeping in touch with the people that they would deal with on a regular basis. So, for example, the dementia group come into us on a weekly basis. Obviously, they come to us, but the team have been keeping in regular contact with them, making sure they're all okay, trying to keep their spirits up and give some. And then finally, the community team have been trying to work with youth groups, etc., in getting activities and things for children to do, ideas to keep kids amused when they're at home, so that the parents don't go stir crazy. So it's really been really fun. And we are thankful to people who've been really busy on that.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the things that I'm just looking at some of the messages that are coming through. Thank you for all the nice messages. It's appreciated, I can tell you. Can I just take one or two of the regarding the bigger picture?
Sorry, our spaniel's trying to get in on the act.
I'm trying. They're coming in so thick.
So I'll read out some of the questions that we've already got on that, if
Yeah.
that makes life.
Well, there's one, I think. I mean, the basic questions, are quite a few questions coming through there that are really asking how are we going to manage through the coronavirus situation, and business model that gets us through, etc., etc., etc. I think it's a point that, and I'm not having a go at people who said we should have money on the squad, because I think you saw that in fact that we managed the squad, and where we were coming out of the window and getting through February, we were starting to gel, and unfortunately, that on the pitch, it stopped something that we were building. But having said that, look, we took the opportunity to do the pitch, and you might say, in the face of the coronavirus, why would you do? The answer is that because we got the club into a position whereby people are prepared to invest in it, and these are good people, these are people, and the right motivated people. And so it wasn't so that this just happened. This is a consequence of years and years of work and lots of people contributing to that. So we get into a strong position that enables people to, if you remember me going on phase 3 is about getting a capital investment into the club. Well, we got the first investment from Santini in September. We're getting investment. So this was all going on over, from September last year. And as we went through everything that was going on the pitch that you saw, and the pitch was wrecked for historical reasons. It was too old, and that sort of came out the blue, and we were preparing to fix that. So by the time we came to the coronavirus period, we'd already done extensive work on researching what should be done and shouldn't be done on the pitch, for example. And the cash came in, and we committed. We negotiated well on the pitch. And we will have a Deso pitch. The people who have been working on that, they are the same people who have put in Man United's pitch, Man City's pitch. They worked on Wembley. They did the Stade de France, and we chose from Allinsons, who worked with us for many years, and they basically accelerated the implementation. And I'll just come back to this because it was a fairly break at the time. We took this just in front of when the lockdown occurred, and we were aware that the lockdown was coming. My call on the Thursday night before that happened was that I couldn't see us playing football until the earliest, the 1st of August at that time. Having said that, we were supposed to be coming back training on the 3rd of April and possibly playing on the 30th of April. I just didn't believe that. And I felt that if we could sort of the Dunkirk spirit with these guys, they would slam into the pitch, get it done, and we could have a supply chain that week as well. So apologies to the residents as people were driving in lorry loads of sand and topsoil and gravel, etc. And we managed that all through. We even had contingency plans for the people who were working on it to sleep and stay isolated in the ground to finish it off. And so great work with the contractor Mallinsons. And, I think that everybody's going to be pleased that, as we said in the project, was to come out with the club in a better state at the end of it. We will have a top Deso pitch at the end of this. And that's just a little bit of good news in there. But the big point was, are we able to get through it? And the reason we're talking about that is just, yes, we digested and we've done and dealt with the pitch issue. We were already keeping resources aside to deal with that we've got. So we may delay some of the other projects, but that gives us the cash breathing space, and we're in a relatively comfortable position, certainly compared to many of the other clubs that I have seen. And I was asked to work on the working group of the EFL, so I've been directing the modelling of all the cash flows coming in from all the other clubs, and we're certainly in a great position to weather the storm. We may still have to make some hard decisions, and that will potentially. And the reason for that is that because what we don't know is when paying football will start again. And that's the key thing. When will it start? I've said many times, we will not make the decision on that. The virus will make the decision on that. What we have to do is to look at how we manage the cost base over that period of time. You could, as a pessimist, say, this may not happen until 2021. If that's the case, we've been modelling what we do to deal with that and the variety of options that we take. And I used to do this for a living, so I'm fairly relaxed at this time that the club's position to weather the storm.
So, Mark, one question on Twitter, which kind of relates to that, is that if the season restarts in June, which looks like one of the possible scenarios for the 56 or whatever it is the EFL are guesstimating that it would take to do, what happens to the players whose contracts are due to expire at the end of or end of June?
Yeah, the whole thing's up in the air, but it's up in the air for everybody. That's the thing. And I learned a long ago that you don't worry about the things you can't actually influence at this point in time. So it's a way of saying, the first thing I was trying to get the league to focus on was the wages in April, because a lot of clubs will not be full wages in April. I can assure you of that. So those clubs will wander on into potentially into an insolvency process, and we know that takes a bit of time. There'll be courts, and there'll be a lot of them, and so on. So that will just all push forwards. And the fight was for time and keeping things afloat, because as time goes on, two things will happen. One, you'll get clearer as regards what's going to happen in terms of when the season's going to start, who's going to be around there and then. And the second thing, and I would hope, although I've been, the reason I wrote the article over the weekend was I'm being pretty disappointed with where it's got to so far, that negotiations would start, because all those things come into play then, and we actually have contracts for players who are for all of next season, and they're under contract. That's a fixed term contract that you can't just break. Well, can you? Or can you actually, as a group, go and have a look with lawyers as to whether or not that can or can't be done? And that remains to be seen.
Sorry, I'm just laughing at the number of comments that are coming in about wine and how many bottles of wine I've through since lockdown.
It's far more interesting.
I have to say, I didn't have my first glass of wine until 5:30 this evening, so that's not too bad. So a couple of extra questions that have come in, Mark. One is around the potential of playing behind closed doors, and is that really feasible and or desirable or not?
Absolutely not. As an ex-player, I would hate it. Well, as a player, I'd hate it. As somebody who is running a club whereby we will the gates to a far greater extent than the Premier League, then it's a no-brainer that we would not want that to happen. I saw one of the comments was, well, is there a viable sort of streaming option that we could use? And my view on that is, I don't think that would really make the difference up in terms of what we would lose. But just as an aside, everybody who's involved in running clubs at this point in time are looking at next season. We would estimate that probably revenues would be about 50% down, because a lot of you out there, as you know better than I do, are worrying about the future. Some may lose jobs in the future, and therefore the gates may be smaller. The ancillary revenue from food and beverage will be smaller, and that's what we'll be forecasting in terms of next season. What I would say is that there is a massive opportunity to once and for all reach this horrible wage inflation, the arms race that you see in the league, and that to me is the opportunity in all this. All we have to do is keep our heads above water for the period until we get to paying gates basically, and this club is well able to do that. But the other part of the project that we had was that I did get involved with the EFL more so that we could actually help to shape the thing. Actually get everybody else to see the sense of that, and I think people do, then we'd be better off within that, because it wouldn't be the same wage free for all that we've got at this point in time.
So somebody has asked a question about if it was up to us, how would we choose to deal with the existing system, which I think is fair to say, not just take the standings as we are now and have that as the final positions. But obviously there have been a lot of options talked about, whether it's points per game, whether it's ending it now but having promotions and no relegations, whether it's carrying on and playing it, running it into next season, merging two seasons together. Well, what do you see from a perspective as the best outcome?
Clearly, no promotions and promotion relegations is the one that we like. To be quite not enter the date on that part, we can obviously appear to be conflicted, because we are currently in a relegation position, albeit with a game in hand and importantly with momentum, which we can logically argue is due to the players that we brought in the window starting to gel with the team. So to be quite honest, again, I'm not a fan of involved in that debate yet, because there are other things to sort out, and I think that the real issue you felt is to sort out this position on players' contracts, because they can't do the job they're getting paid to do. And for me, the key thing is to understand whether we can break those contracts or get those contracts suspended. And that's the issue that I'm focusing on, and I'm not trying to let that blur anything else. I think that my personal preference would be to finish the season, and I'm very relaxed because these are unusual times. So if we played, from December through for 6-7 months, crammed everything in, and then for years we were getting that extra month back, and we get back to a position to start again in August. If it's 4 years, 5 years, so what? This is a pandemic. These are unusual times. So I don't see this rush to suddenly start the new season.
So we've had a few questions coming in players, and from a player's perspective, how we might be coping or feeling about what's going on at the moment. Obviously, they're all at home, hopefully keep fit, but with no reality as to when they might be back. From your perspective as a player, and having spoken to El Capitano this afternoon, how do you coping with it?
I think it's very, very difficult. What happened is that the guys went to it with instructions from the sports scientist as to how to keep fit in a period of time, and I would guess that I say I would guess because of the strict furloughing rules, we're not allowed really to talk to and give directions to people. But I know that as a group, amongst themselves, they've sort of kept themselves together. They feed back into sports, and just as a group of mates, as nothing else. And footballers are very competitive. You'd bet on a fly, as it were, and you'd play snooker, and that will be always competitive. So I know they are competitive, and I know that Hodgie, there's been an element of competition, who's done what and so forth and so on. But that's a very false situation, because you can only do that for so long, and ultimately you have to get back out onto the training ground. And the longer that this goes on, they're going to need a pre-season before you start, so you have to start factoring that into your figures. So Mickey and the guys, yes, they're paid professionals, and what they will try and do is keep themselves fit. But whatever happens, the time it's gone on now, they're going to have to start basically another pre-season.
I have to say, guys, I think it's very unfair that everybody's commenting on my wine and nobody's commented on the fact that Mark's drinking whiskey just because he's disguised it as a glass
of Diet Coke.
We've had one question in that I'll answer, which is to do with some of the non-footballing revenues that the club has, and to what extent they're on or they're affected by the coronavirus. I guess one of the good news stories, in a way, is Tranmere College through all this. As you know, we have a college now that has around 150 students in it. Obviously, the college has had to stop operating in terms of physically turning up to class each day, but the tutors have done a brilliant job of converting it to an online model. And the attendance rates that we've had until this week's obviously today, so everybody is on break, but we've had a phenomenal attendance rate, around 98%, which is pretty incredible for, I think, any educational establishment in normal times. So to be able to do that when you don't physically have the kids, I think is a big testament to the tutors that we've got working on that. We've also got Hill is still operating, obviously on a radically different basis to how it has been. The accommodation side is all completely shut down. The restaurant, in terms of people going in there to eat, is shut down. they are doing quite a lot in terms of commercially. They are doing takeaway food deliveries, which have been building, particularly on sort of Sunday lunches and Mother's Day and Easter Sunday, etc. But they've also become involved in some of the community stuff that we're doing by producing these Tranmere food bundles for people, which is not hot deliveries, it's chilled or frozen food, and being done entirely non-profit basis. So they're basically ready meals that are freshly made at the hotel, but they're sent out for people, and they're really designed for people who aren't in a position to cook for themselves. So we've had a lot of kids, grown-up kids who live out of the area ordering those elderly parents, for example, where they're worried that they're not getting it properly if nobody's going in to look after them. So that's been doing quite nicely, and actually we now quite a few nursing homes, for example, who are ordering in every single week now for their residents to be fed through that. And again, because I think we do have to be grateful to the staff that we've got left. We've currently got about 20 staff who are still working full time at the club, who haven't been furloughed. Kev Burrows is sort of manning the show at the Riverhill and doing a great job. But I have to say also with his son, who's been doing it on an entirely voluntary basis, being kitchen porter, bottle washer, phone answerer. So yeah, I mean that's been brilliant. So the college and the Riverhill are both carrying on, albeit on a different model to normal.
Can I just say a message just come in from Hannah from Iceland. Hannah, it's great to have you on this. These lads who came in from one of the games that we had, and we're in touch, and we're going to try and get an Icelandic branch. I did explain to Hannah that we are the only English league club with a professional with a name, and we already have our Swedish connection through Larn, and we have a number of Norwegians as well. So we will be developing that. And once again, thanks very much, and thanks for your poem, which has been stuck into the competition. But can we move on to some of the other questions that we got? I'm sorry, I'm going to do justice to all the questions that have come in, because so many are piling through, and also we're not very good at this. We're not very expert at it, so just bear with us. I mean, I can't actually read it, so.
The answer to what has Mark got in his Coke is whiskey. Somebody is asking about how we're under contract for next season and how many of them is at the end of the current season.
We got 10 players under contract. That's partly by dint of when we took players on in the window. What we didn't want to do was to commit, because we simply at that stage didn't really realistically know where we were going to be, League One or League Two. So we felt that it was appropriate to put on the right players, actually just on loans and not on things that committed us to next season. That being the case, whether it's League Two or League One, equally there are League Two relegation there. That means that our we're not desperately over-committed to next season, whichever way that it goes. Clearly, I hope that we're in League One, but just for everybody, and to finish off that question, really, that people asked. Look, if we're in League Two next year, and somebody asked the question, have we taken legal advice and stuff like that? The answer is I probably wouldn't take legal advice on it. Because there are other people who have much more to lose, and they would be taking legal advice, without naming clubs. You only have to look at where the figures are bigger, and they would be taking legal advice, and clearly we'd hang off the back of that, because if they establish the principle elsewhere, then we would agree with that and push that. So I think that's one of the things that it will be. But whichever league we're in, I think we'll be nice than we will.
So we've got about how supporters can help at the moment with everything that's going on. I think obviously there's the obvious one for those of you who can afford to sign up for your season tickets, that would be great. And we've been really pleased. I think, we're around the 700 mark of season tickets, which, given that we haven't finished the current season and we currently can't say when the next season will start, I mean, that's been quite touching to see. People putting their faith in the club that there will be a next season. We might not know the dates yet, but there will be. But also,
it is a massive thing. I can tell you, it really is. Thank you for that.
People can't afford it, and so at the moment that is absolutely understood, and we don't want anybody who can't afford to pay to feel under any pressure to do it, which is why we extended the early bird deadline, and I suspect it will probably get extended further if we're not having some clarity as to when this is going to end. That's one thing. One thing that we would really like people's feedback on is the new shirts. So obviously these were all ordered for the new season and were due to arrive in early May. We usually try and release the new shirts on our last match of the season. The way that we're going at the moment, I think that might be a little too late. So we're currently having a debate about what do we do with that. Do we an online launch and try to fulfill the orders electronically and send them out through the post? I mean, that would be logistically complicated, but not impossible. I think people would just need to be a little bit patient. It might take a couple of weeks to get the parcel sent out, but we could do it. Or we could delay it until we do get to the last game of the season and do it then. But it all starts to get strange, and it's quite hard to comment when we don't actually know what the timescales are for this in terms of ordering the next lot of shirts. So really any feedback we can get from you guys on that. Do you want us to go ahead in May and launch as we would ordinarily have done and try and work out the logistics of dealing with it or not? In terms of other ways that people can help, a lot of our fans have been brilliant in volunteering to support the charity stuff. I think we've close on 200 volunteers who've come forward and who are involved in that. You can buy, if you're one of the lucky people whose income is secure and you haven't lost your job, etc. The lottery which is a great way of supporting the club's community efforts, as that money goes directly back into the club. Is there anything else to add to that, Mark?
No, I think that one of the big things, certainly when I came back, and I believe that the potential of the club was actually the fact that it is really a club that should be and could be better with its community. And I think that's what's happening now, is that is that goodwill that's latent in the community around Birkenhead and on the Wirral is being focused through the club volunteers, all that kind of stuff. It's been tremendous, and I think that just helps build a bond around the club that makes it. Your football clubs don't get a lot of sympathy, but actually I think that people, with things like the local council and stuff like that. When I was at the FA, the club was fighting with its council lieutenant, with its landlord at this level. Whereas here, we're working with the local council in so many ways and so many areas. Part of that is the fact that we can leverage, the goodwill and the fantastic attitude the fans have. So long may that happen. So buy you a wine and Mark a whiskey when all is ends. Well, I'll just take his name, Daniel Kelly. Thank you for that. We've got you down for that. So
slightly lighter stuff. Somebody is saying, has Mark watched the Sunderland documentary?
Yeah, it makes me feel really good. I say that, but I those guys are trying to do. I suppose there's two things, isn't it? It's what you're trying to do and the way that you do it. I think that certainly my style has been a lot more low key, in as much that we'd rather do things rather than talk about doing things. When you've got the credibility of having done some things, then you get the confidence of the fans that help you to do what you do.
English Game is another good one to watch. We've been watching. If he hasn't tried that one yet, that's
I enjoyed that.
That's quite an interesting one to watch.
Just like Another Day in the Office. But actually, it's quite interesting because the fault lines go through English football. To this day, they are there because you will see, and I've said this, that the FA is absent without lead at the moment when you're looking at all the debate around what's happening in football. And the professional game has to be, careful what you wish for, because they have for years and years signed the FA from the game, and as a consequence, they have their own problems at the moment, and they haven't got a lot of cash, but actually don't feel that they can contribute to any debate, I suspect, and so a lot of it. Game's good.
So back to serious matters. One of the questions that's come in is around, although obviously the circumstances causing it are terrible, does this pause give football over time to reflect on how it is run and an opportunity to improve the future for football?
Yeah, sorry, I think I've dealt with that earlier on in some of the things that I've said. Yes, I think it's a massive opportunity. It's both an existential threat, to use the phrase, but also an opportunity. And I think it's really there. And the two things I would say is that whenever you put laws in place or regulations in place, a tax partner, a good friend of mine, used to say to me, whatever man has made, man can unmake, as it were. So the way around rules and this and that and the other. So the two things for me that have to be done, whatever rules that come in, they have to have two things. One is they have to be simple. It's a wage cap. Simple, pure and simple, PAYE, you check that through. And the second thing is that in breach of that, it has to be draconian. And I'd be all for kicking people out, basically, depending on the severity of the breach. Certainly points deduction straight away. And, once you do that, you would, and I'd look at it as well from the point of view of the player who's signing the contract. Because if you want the PFL side of that, you make it for the player as well, because if they haven't done their due diligence and don't realise that the club's over its limit or whatever, then they should be that null and void. It's that type in an attitude and context I think you need around player wage caps in the future. Simple and draconian in the breach.
So on to really quite a sad subject that a few people are asking about is Sean Purden, the young lad who sadly died on Monday, and the arrangements for his funeral tomorrow. Now, obviously, because of for those of you who haven't followed the story, Sean is a young lad who last September, I think it was, came to us to be mascot. He had been terribly ill. He had had a very serious cardiac arrest from which he had recovered, and he came to us, had a lifelong Tranmere supporter, had a great day as mascot at the club, spent some time with Nors, spent some time with raids, etc. Sadly, only about 6 weeks after he was mascot for us, he had another couple of massive cardiac arrests, and has been very ill since, and sadly died on Saturday. Now, given where we are with the coronavirus, one of the horrible things about it is his family can't have the kind of funeral that they would like to have for him. It obviously has to be limited to very close family only. And what they are doing is driving his funeral car, the coffin, around a route around Birkenhead, and they've asked as many people as possible to display blue hearts. And so we would love it if the Tranmere supporters came that. The funeral car will be leaving from Clare House at 1 o'clock tomorrow, and it should take about a 45-minute route. It's been put on social media. We'll get it on the website as well, so that people can see exactly where the car is going. But if people do have the ability to go outside and pay your respects as the car may be coming past, or just to put a blue heart on the memory of Sean, it would mean a huge amount to the family.
Yeah, and I'd endorse that. I remember the lad coming in as a mascot, and it really is for a little kid to have that. And I said to his dad, I think it was, um, the good thing was that he was a massive Tranmere fan, and he was get back to League One. So that was a good thing. And slightly changing the tone. I've lost it now because somebody has just very kindly asked whether Nicola should be distancing herself from the elderly, which assumes a dag at me. That's fine, because I've got your name and I'll be back to you soon. And,
I'm caring for the vulnerable here. But if there are any more comments about like Reece more than half, then I think Mark could be stoned by the end of this lockdown than he is now.
Yeah, I don't know whether you saw the pictures, by the way, and that thing there added to the scars I've got from playing for the club. This is what for bit meal. I'll explain that some other time. Just one thing back on the pitch. A few people have been asking. A couple of things are coming through in the threads that are coming through, and one is that you do want the kit to be put online and to go. And I think you'll like it. Those of you who remember Hugh Fullerton, top tip. That'll give you a clue. Hugh Fullerton cutlery, that was. I think it was 83, 8 around that time.
Not many people are as old as you are going to remember.
Not many people are going to live that long. The second thing is just people sort of said, is it this, is it that, is it a Desso? Yeah, it's an Desso. It's a Desso equivalent. It's a Desso type pitch. And Mallansons believe this is a better product than Desso was. The other thing is there's there's lots of technical queries have come in, but we've doubled the drainage into like a modern level of drainage, and on top of that we've actually put a carpet right across the top of that, across the pitch. So
and new irrigation.
And new irrigation, yeah, and new etc. So it will be. I'm quite pleased really. And our groundsman, our long-suffering groundsman, who struggled manfully in the difficult periods and the difficult winter. It's like he's got a new Christmas toy. So
and so he deserves it, to be honest, because he did get a lot of stick last season, and he must have been wondering what he'd walked into, because he joined us as the pitch was failing, which was absolutely nothing to do with the best groundsman in the world. Could not have stopped that happening with what was going under the subsurface and he did get criticism about that. I mean, criticising in a way was fair enough, because the pitch was a mess and there is no getting away from it, although nobody had expected to fail as catastrophically as it did, as quickly as it did. But it was absolutely nothing to do with the groundsman, who was working around the clock to keep playable at all. So it's quite nice that he will actually have probably the best pitch in the entire league next year as a surface to show off.
Yeah, and I think some of the churlish comments were as a result of a different agenda that didn't relate to the club, and I did call them out a little bit in an article in the Echo, because they shouldn't have a go at our staff who they hadn't seen. Allegedly, people hadn't seen them on the pitch. That's because they were in bed and tucked up in the morning when our guys were working on it. And that shouldn't be missed. So
somebody's asking a technical question on the pitch around, do we save money in the long term by having a Desso, and how it have to be done?
Yeah, it does. We've done all relations in terms of maintenance stuff, and as I say before, this was stuff that was ongoing within the club right through the time from before Christmas. We went and had a look. We're going to spend too much time on the pitch because it's a big thing, but no, it does it make more money for the club? Yes, it means that certainly you can accommodate a second team playing on it. My argument was you probably could accommodate a second team anyway on what we had, but this makes it far better and far more usage of the pitch that we can make, etc. And at the end of the day, it's the surface that we require for our team to play on. I think we play reasonably good football. Having said that, I played in the 70s, so you know what the pitches were like there if you're old enough. And I don't think it did United any harm when they came to play in it. So, there's a lot of crap talked about it, to be quite honest. And as I say, we got on the wrong end of a media war and a that related to us. much more about the women's game.
So there's a question that's come in that I'll take about pandemic insurance, saying Wimbledon took out pandemic insurance. Is that something that we should look at going forward? The club does actually have pandemic insurance. I would love to say that was a well thought through strategic decision. The answer is it was probably more good luck than judgment. It is limited. It's a maximum of £100,000, and it remains to be seen whether they will actually honour it or whether they will try and wriggle out of it. We're hearing a lot about other people who have pandemic insurance and their insurers are still refusing to pay out on the basis that it was novel and before, which seems to me is what a pandemic is about, because if you knew about it you would have something in place. But anyway, that remains to be seen. We do have pandemic insurance and we will try and claim if we can.
And just Martin, can I have my tie-ups back, please? That's Martin Dowler, who took my tie-ups off me 40 years ago when I was running. I probably wasn't.
I'm sure you gave them to him. Just trying to look at some more. Is there undersoil heating? No, there isn't undersoil heating. We did look at it actually, and in the end, there was a little bit of we ran out of time because of the urgency with which we had to take the decision to do the pitch. We are investigating the potential of getting a biomass boiler in. It's a lot more environmentally friendly than the boilers we use at the moment. We're still looking at that, even without the undersoil heating, just as an option for the whole stadium. But there's a whole series of calculations and evaluations to be done about that. I don't think we really need the undersoil heating with the Deso pitch. All the feedback that we've got, it's a bit of a luxury thing to have. A question about whether Mickey Mullen is living with Tibetan monks. I'm not quite sure where that one's come from.
I'll just pick that out. Ed Mitchell, I'll certainly ask him because I'm speaking to him tomorrow, but not to my knowledge. I think it's in his contract. So I'll ask him tomorrow specifically for you.
Somebody's saying, will the three at the training ground still go ahead?
The intention is that we will try to do that. But as I say, as we look at the resources that the club has, currently we've allocated funds to do the 3G because clearly that does actually improve the revenues coming into the club, the weight off the excellent pitches that we have at the campus. The other big project that we have is refurbing the recreation centre. It really needs it. And, if I have a choice, you have to make priority-based. But if I make a choice between the two, then we do the 3G pitch at the campus first and see if we still have the funds to improve the recreation centre. It's fair to say that, the council are contributing to both of those projects. And it would be a shame if we couldn't do the recreation centre. We run a lot of our community programmes through there, but equally it's a source of revenue for the club. And my intention here is do all of those projects, the new pitch, well, not the new pitch, December we had to do pitch, we had to find the cash for that. And then to do the 3G, to do the recreation centre. And whilst we've taken it over, we would have opened it up, but we can't because of the virus. But we've taken over the centre in Beechwood, and we've got great plans for that to become operative once we get out of the situation. So the answer is that 3G is still probably top of the next things that we need to do. But of course, we just have to look as to how we ourselves through the summer, etc. And we constantly make priorities. In fact, tomorrow's job is to do that, is to start modelling the finances out through to no paying gates until next.
We've got a question that I'll answer first, and then you can answer if you want, which is about what does it feel like to sit in the away boxes and see the away fans in full swing. And I have to say, it is amazing. It is always great to sitting in the directors' boxes is slightly odd because you have to try. I don't always manage,
you don't do it.
But you have to try and behave yourself. It's not really etiquette to swear, which Mark tends to do, or to jump up and celebrate too much, which I tend to do. So we both have to try and keep it under wraps a little bit. So it's a bit of a chore from that point of view. But one of the benefits of it is we always get a great view of our travelling support, and they are amazing. We have the best followings in the league. We have one of the noisiest followings in this league. And one of the things that's been nice to see this season is how many other clubs comment on it really doesn't matter whether we've won or whether we've lost. How many other clubs say best set of away supporters to come to the club this year, and I think that's brilliant. And for me, it's a great thing. It's something that I'll never take for granted, and it makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end.
Pretty much what I was going to say. I think I'm tremendously proud of our away support. I know that when you have to get this sort of camera, but I think ours are exceptional. I am biased. I think the first thing that I've told a story a number of times, and that is that the way when we went down, that was the point at which I remember going back to my seat and turning to Nicky and saying, Nicky, if we got that support, we'll be fine. We'll come back, and so that was the first thing, and I always go back to that. And if anybody thinks over the last few years is good, then that's payback for what we got at Plymouth on that day, which was tremendous support. Talking about, you've always got to be relatively polite. I do swear a bit in the box, but I keep that under my breath. Someone said that I leant across and I shook the director's hand, the Newport director's hand, and said, I'm sorry, because I know how he'd be feeling. He'd be pretty gutted with a 119th minute winner.
And it was more than we got when Wembley.
Well, Nicky takes it personally. I have nothing to say about Forest Green. The manager's a great guy. Cooper's Bitter was a bottle that was we produced, but there you go. But I just take it back to, I'm really pleased because, I go back to one game in particular, and that was Barrow away. And Nicky says that, she shows her it does, and we went into the boardroom, bearing in mind that they were 3-1 up in the 90th minute or the 89th minute, 4-3, and I was trying to be polite in the boardroom and saying, that's a bit of a turnaround and things like this, knowing that these guys were absolutely gutted. And in the corner, I could see Nicky looking down, saying, "We scored in the 89th, the 91st." 93rd minute and so forth, and I was just standing next to their directors and thinking, oh, for God's sake. So the away support's fantastic. The away support is part and parcel of this club. I think that at times people have we don't look after away supporters and this, that, and the other, but believe me, we try to do that. I mean, you go back just at Wembley when everybody was away at Wembley, although it became a home ground in the last 3 years. But when everybody signed up to it on the 60th minute, and that's when I didn't like the look of their team. I didn't ever going to break in the second half, but when that came on in the 60th minute, it was absolutely tremendous. And for us, it's fantastic when you come back and our guys have been passionate. What about Oldham away? We had that great run of 7 games. We were 2-0 down, and you were singing Tequila. Absolutely fantastic. I can go back. I can look at Carlisle. I can look at last season at Carlisle and so forth and so on. And if people, when I came here, people said to me, "Why are you doing it? Why after the business career and everything else that you had? Why are you going back to Tranmere? Why are you taking over the club, etc.?" Why? That was the big question.
Coventry away, the last-minute goal.
And I always say it's my wife made me do it. So, but the reality is that you can't get highs like that. Whatever you do, you just can't get highs like that. That sense of unity, that sense of I don't know really. It's just a question of I always say that the math relationships is a trouble. Shared is a trouble halved, but a success shared is a success doubled. And when you've got the fans all there, all going for the same thing, absolutely fantastic feeling. So yes.
So an interesting question related to matches that came in is if you could change one match result of our time here.
Forest Green final.
You see, that was my initial reaction.
But then that means we don't have the following year.
No, but even before that, after I thought about it, I think the Portsmouth away game before that, where we were 2-0 up down at Portsmouth and we lost 3-2 because we had a sort of horrific 20-minute period where they scored 3 times. I think that was in the season when I think the players lost their confidence. That you know, they'd been doing so well, and Portsmouth were a team, and to be 2-0 up at Portsmouth would have been a massive thing. But it then reversed to 3-2. I think that shattered the confidence of a lot and resulted in us going.
She's very unfair. She had a chance to think about it and asked me on the spur of the moment. But I probably would say that would have kept if we won that game because they were on a good run. We'd beaten Shrewsbury the day before, the weekend before, and that would have really would have cemented as we've moved on. Again, you get the fact that there were a lot of guys who came in. You were shopping in the window, and it wasn't so difficult shopping in the window in January or in the year before because we weren't sort of bottom of the league and in danger of going out the league, and that makes a difference to players look at the club and saying, would you come or wouldn't you come? And I think at that time, without naming individuals, I think at that time, there wasn't that spirit in the dressing room that we found. And this time, even though we're in the bottom part of the relegation zones, have come into play. If you look at Woodyard, great competitor in there, love it. In terms of what he does in midfield. If you look at Clark, massive warrior, would do it. If you look at Vaughan, he's a guy who is like another James Norwood, although he doesn't do the Twitter like James Norwood. And then you look at who's coming back to the club that really is he's felt more at home than anywhere else, and to prove. So the guys that came in, really had the motivation to play this time, as opposed to what we did in the first season here when we got what we could to bring in to change the squad at the time, which had us nailed to the foot of the table.
Right, we're around time. I did promise that we were going at 7:00, so we've been asked to say congratulations to Bethan Cookson and Matty James on the birth of Ayla Ray, who was born on Tuesday night. So massive congratulations to both of them.
Yeah, absolutely.
A few people asking whether we're going to do about your hair in lockdown, whether I'm going to cut it. I already have, and I don't think I did a bad job. I, on the other hand, have not let Mark near my hair.
Can you all please vote? Can you all please vote as to whether or not I should be allowed to cut his hair?
I think that is a very definite no.
I'm not so sure, actually. Oh, hang on, is that Brian Kenny? Oh, sorry, that was Councillor Brian Kenny.
So what is your favourite Tranmere game? That's got to be Boreham Wood, hasn't it? At Wembley.
Tranmere game was Arsenal 19. I think that the Boreham Wood game has to be the favourite game. It's just, there's a video released, which is against all odds, and it really is a tremendous characterful right from the start. The only downside was that I got booked in 63 at Arsenal and Ride off in 47, and that points me.
Right, I can hear the clock striking 7, so we are going to wrap it up there. I hope we've been able to give you some answers about some of the questions a lot of people are worrying about, curious about in the current times. If there is enough interest in it, maybe in a couple of weeks' time, do another one of these, maybe focus on a specific topic. Who knows whether we'll get clarity to what is going on. But in the meantime, our best wishes to anybody who's currently struggling or currently ill. We've got a few of our supporters, Andy Doyle, etc. We send our wishes to because he's having a tough time at the moment. But I know there are dozens and dozens of people who So love from both of us, everybody. Stay safe, stay well, and we'll do another one of these if you want to in a couple of weeks.
Yeah. Sorry for those people whose questions I haven't answered. Some of them are pretty good, well, by looking at it. But again, once again, thank you for your support. It's always appreciated, never taken for granted, and basically keep well.
Thank you.